take a picture. No, please. No, no. Okay. Oh, hello. Sorry. Okay. Um, the video people are going to kill me. Eh, come on in. Come on in. So I said we're going into our final two sessions, and we are. Do you want to show them? Go ahead, come on in, come on in. So our next, we're very excited about this next conversation. It's called Breaking Barriers, A Journey to the Federal Bench. I am very pleased to introduce the Honorable Judge Jacqueline Becerra from the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida. Hopefully I got that right. Good. And Becerra. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Judge, for joining us. She was texting us, she was dealing with an issue. And I know how difficult it is for you to come out here. So thank you so much. She's a very good friend of Greenberg Torig, I know. And so we're very excited to have you. And the conversation will be moderated by Bridget Check-Samoli, shareholder at Greenberg. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm pretty loud and
we're
the
pretty
judge, neither of us are shy, but that's okay. So, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us. I am thrilled to be speaking today with Judge Becerra, who I've been fortunate to not only know for a very long time, but to have previously practiced with. So welcome back to Greenberg, Judge.
Good to be back. I was here for, the comment is, the introduction mentioned that I was a friend of the firm's. I was a partner here for 15 years. I don't know that they think of me as a friend anymore, but because I left and now you all appear in front of me on cases, so it's a whole different thing. But I was here for 15 years.
We will always consider the judge a friend of the firm, and we're always grateful when she returns. So, well, thank you so much. We are all very excited to hear from you about your journey to the federal bench. Like any good journey, we have to start at the beginning. So you are a South Florida native. You grew up in Hialeah. It's something that you regularly talk about, and so I wanted to start there. Can you give us a little bit of background about, your beginnings growing up in Hialeah, your family? I know you're very close with your sisters and with your parents. So.
So it does start in Hialeah. And in fact, I have a map of Hialeah that's right in the entrance of my chambers. So you can't miss it when you walk in, and I talk about it quite a bit because I think it is important to represent my community. It's part of what I do on the bench. And I do talk about it quite a bit. So my parents are Cuban immigrants, like a lot of folks in the Miami area. My parents came after the Cuban Revolution. They would never have met in Cuba. They were very different. My dad was, I think, when you think of Cuban immigrants from that time frame, my father was from like an upper middle class family, well educated. He was young. He was only 19. My mother was from a very small village. Like she remembers getting electricity. My grandparents are first cousins. Need I say more? Right. So it's a very different kind of upbringing, right? But they were both, the communist revolution leveled their socioeconomic status flat. And so they met here. My father was a butcher at the Fontainebleau Hilton. My mother was doing a million odd jobs, and her cousin worked at the hotel and introduced them. And that was the end of that. So my dad actually had a brief stint in the US Army. That's a story for another day. But thanks to the GI Bill, they were able to buy a little house in Hialeah, and that's still where they live, and that's where I grew up. So my father worked on the docks. He was a longshoreman. My mom, to say my mother was a housewife is sort of odd because she really sort of like managed like a 3 square block area of East Hialeah. That's really what she did. I mean, in the meantime, she also raised my sisters, but she also did a lot of other things, right? And so I went to the University of Miami. I went to schools, obviously, in Miami. I went to the University of Miami. And then I was fortunate enough that for law school, I started at and then I transferred and I went to Yale. And I was just talking to Lisa. Is Lisa still here? Lisa is our receptionist. She's the voice of Greenberg Torig.
And the face.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally the voice of Greenberg Torig. And I was talking to her because she coincidentally met a young woman who I talked to a couple of years ago about going to Yale. And I always tell people that, for me, obviously, it's a wonderful thing to have gone to Yale Law School, right? Of course, professionally, it's incredible. But it completely changed the trajectory of my life, right? When I got to New Haven, I was still living in the room that my parents brought me home from the hospital to, right? I didn't go away for college. I was not allowed to live in the dorms. Of course not. I mean, I wasn't even allowed to live like across the street. So, for me, it opened my personal world, right? It just exploded my world in many, many ways. And so, of course, that was an opportunity of a lifetime. Professionally, it clearly put me on a trajectory that was different, I think, than if I had stayed at Miami. Not better, just different. It was definitely a different trajectory. But then personally, it also opened a lot of doors for me. So that's the first 22 years.
So you've spoken a lot in interviews and on panels about the importance of education, just for yourself, but also in general, and how your parents instilled that importance in you. Can you talk a little bit about education?
So, and this is the story of so many immigrant communities, right? So for my father, there's no doubt that if he had stayed in Cuba, he wanted to be a doctor, and I'm sure he would have been, or he would have just run some of my grandfather's businesses, right? Here he scaled fish at the Fontainebleau Hilton and then was a longshoreman, right? Like, and he got quite far because he was the president of the union for a while. So he did incredibly well. But, he went to Miami-Dade Community College the whole time I was in elementary school and high school. He'd take like one class every time he could, right? And he did it because he wanted his English to be better when he was in meetings and things like that. But he obviously had no opportunity for an education. My mother never finished high school because she immigrated during her senior year of high school. So her cousin pretended to be her and went out to the fields to cut sugarcane, which is what you had to do at the beginning of the Communist Revolution. I think people still do it now. So of course she had to do that, right? Or she would have been imprisoned. So her cousin pretended to be her and cut sugarcane for my mother, while my mother went to Havana and ran a census for the Communist Party in the hopes of getting a visa to come here. By the time she got here, she was already 19. And so she was too old to go to high school here. So she never finished high school. My mother would have been a lawyer for sure. For sure. And I always tell people, if my mother had been born in this country, she'd be the CEO of Coca-Cola because she's just one of those women. And I admire my mother for many, many things. She's brilliant, but she's also one of those people that she makes decisions and doesn't look back. And she has no regrets. Good, bad, whatever. She makes a decision. She makes it and she doesn't look back. I'm always second guessing myself and this and that. I waste so much time. My mother wastes no time. Makes her decision and moves on. And so for my mother, especially, she had no education really, right? And not the education she dreamed of. So for her, and certainly for my father and my grandmother and my grandfather, going to college for us, they made us think that that was like graduating from 8th grade, right? Like you had to do that. Like, what do you mean you're not, like, going to college was like finishing 8th grade. Like everybody had to go to college, and we were 4 girls, 4 women now, of different abilities and interests, right? And they didn't care. They just did not care. It's like, no, all 4 of you will be college graduates, and all 4 of us are. For them, they saw it, and I think they saw it correctly, as an ability, right, to really change the trajectory of our lives. And so we were just plainly told we had to go to college. And, my grandmother and my mother were both seamstresses. And it was funny because neither one of them allowed my sisters to learn how to sew or to cook. We were never allowed in the kitchen. And my grandmother had the theory that if we learned to sew or we learned to cook, we might like it. That we might like it because she loved it. And they didn't want us to like that. And so we were not allowed to cook and we were not allowed to sew. I today am actually a great cook, but I learned to cook years after my grandmother passed. And once I left Miami is when I learned to cook, which my mother thinks it's hysterical because she didn't teach me how to cook either. So for us, for my family, the issue of education, of course, was transformative, and it was, right? There's no place in the planet where a woman who didn't finish high school can raise a woman who went to Yale and is a federal district court judge. I mean, there's no place then or now where that happens. And so my parents believed in that, even when I didn't believe in it, even when I thought it was just they were being crazy Cubans, right? They believed in it. And I have a sister who's a dentist. My other sister's been a school teacher at the same school for 40 years. And my other sister got a business degree and has had all sorts of jobs in business and is now pretty successful real estate. So we've all worked. We've always worked.
So you're attending Yale, and instead of returning to Miami, you decide or you move into a position at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. Um, I guess, how did that go over with your parents? No.
It's interesting because when I left to Yale, that did not go over well. And in fact, my parents were not supportive at all of me leaving. When I got into Yale, they said, that's nice. I don't know how you think you're getting there. I had a full scholarship at the University of Miami, and so my parents were not helping me at that point go to law school. I didn't have any financial aid because I had a full scholarship. And my parents literally just looked at me and they're like, that's great that you got in. And so what? It was like, you're not going. At least we're not helping you go. And I was home one day and I'd already gotten accepted, but obviously was not going to Yale. And the phone rings and I pick it up and it's the dean of students at Yale. Natalia Martin is her name. She's not the dean of students anymore. 5-foot Puerto Rican Cuban. I mean, little thing. Harvard Yale graduate herself. She calls me and she said, oh, I'm the dean of students, whatever, we sent a letter. Did you get it? So obviously before email and logging in and all that. I said, I did get the letter. She goes, well, most people answer us. Most people get into Yale, respond. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't responded. I haven't had the heart to decline. And she's like, no. People who get acceptance letters to Yale come, right? No, you're not declining. I said, no, I'm really sorry, I have to decline. I don't have any money to go to Yale. And I don't have any money to go to Yale because my parents aren't giving me any. I don't have any financial aid to transfer because I have a full ride. And mind you, it was August 1st, and you needed to be in New Haven by August 15th. And I said, look, this is my situation. My parents aren't letting me go, and they're not helping me go, so I have no way of getting there. She says to me, well, will they give you $500, do you think? And I said, well, we're not poor. I mean, we have $500, and I think they'll give it to me. And she's like, if you can get here by the 15th, I'll take care of everything. And she says, and if they don't give you $500, I'll send you a check today. So just let me know. I said, no, I don't think you need to send me $500. I think my parents will fly there. So I tell my parents that, Yale's going to take care of everything. And of course, my father laughed out loud. He's like, yeah, no, they're not. But he says, if it means that much to you, we'll take you to New Haven in 2 weeks. 3 round trip tickets were purchased to go to New Haven. Because I was clearly coming back, right? Because my father's like, because we're not paying for that and she has no money. But if it means that much to you, we'll take you to New Haven. So we walk into the law school, and if you've never been to the law school in New Haven, it's kind of what you see in the movies, right? It's like the old Gothic. It's like what you think of when you think you're going to law school. And there's Natalia Martin at the door, and I swear to God, this woman is this big. She's Spanish, she's talking Spanish, with my parents, brings us into her office, which is about the size of this conference room. It's this regal, gorgeous office. And she has a hot plate where she's making una cafetera cubana. She's making una colada. And the woman starts beating espumita, and I'm like, this is taking a weird turn. And she tells my father that I will be chaperoned, that he is not to be concerned, that the law school will pay for everything. I will apply for financial aid. Once the financial aid comes in January, February, March, whatever, I'll have to turn that check over to the law school. But in the meantime, I have a dorm room. She's already selected for me. There's a credit card with my name on it to the Yale Co-op, so I can buy food. I can buy anything I want with that. And she will personally chaperone me. And I thought to myself, I have worked really hard to have this little woman chaperoning me in New Haven. But my parents left me and my father was like, te va a cuidar Natalia. I mean, he really they literally left me there thinking I was going to be chaperoned. Of course, Natalia Martin never chaperoned me. She was so convincing that when my parents left, I checked in with her the first day because I thought there was something where I had to check in. She's like, oh, I never need to see you again. Have a good time. Have a good time. And my parents would come to visit, and then I'd have to run to her office and fill her in on what I was doing because she could care less what I was doing. But she heard me, right? She saw me, right? Because she had been a Cuban girl whose parents did not want her to go away. She knew what she needed to do to get me there. And I talk about this a lot with folks because I tell people, especially now that everybody's so busy and you're trying to find a mentor or whatever, nobody has time to mentor anybody. She took 5 minutes. I mean, she called me from her office and then she made a colada for my parents. I mean, this woman like did not go out of her way to do either of those two things, right? It took her no time to do that. It completely changed my life. 5 minutes completely changed my life. So when I wanted to now go to DC, I thought that was not going to go over well, as you might imagine. But it was interesting. As much as I grew during that time period, so did my parents. So when I got the offer at the Justice Department, luckily Janet Reno was the Attorney General. Okay, I was not working for Janet Reno. I mean, I was like working for Janet Reno in the sense that all 5,000 people at the Justice Department work for Janet Reno, but I clearly wasn't working for Janet Reno. But my mother knew who Janet Reno was, right? She'd been the former state attorney here for many years, and now she was the first woman attorney general, whatever. And my mother goes, "Eso con Janet Reno." Sí, mami, eso con Janet Reno. Because I think if I had said I was going to go work for a firm, they would have been like, "Hey, no, we know there's firms here because last summer you worked at a firm." Like, my parents aren't like ignorant, right? Like, the firm thing wasn't going to fly, but the Justice Department thing did. And so, to their credit, their attitude was, "You're a professional woman. You're going to have to do what's best for your career. And if the best thing for your career is Washington, we'll visit you and you'll be fine." And so they couldn't have been any more supportive. So I grew up a lot at the time that I was at Yale, and so did they.
So after working in DC, you then will transfer, come down to the U.S. Attorney's Office here in South Florida. And what type of work were you doing when you came down to Miami?
So when I was in DC, I did civil work and then I did criminal work. I was a prosecutor, federal prosecutor in DC. It was just time to come home. All my sisters started having kids, and I am a great tia. I wanted to be super tia. And actually I was, because I didn't have a child of my own at the time. It's so wonderful to be an aunt or an uncle when you don't have kids. Once you have kids, it's over. But before, it's really great. So anyway, now a second sister had a baby, and now like coming on the weekends, like I couldn't manage it anymore. I couldn't be super tia in 3 different houses in 2 days. So it was time to come home. There was an opening at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I was lucky enough to be hired here. Here, I did major narcotics work for a number of years, and so Title III wiretaps, cartels. I mean, the kind of thing you read about in movies, that kind of thing. A lot of fun, very exciting, very interesting. Then I became the counsel to the U.S. Attorney. And so I tried a public corruption case during that time and some money laundering cases, but my primary responsibility was to counsel the U.S. Attorney, who is a presidential appointee himself. So I did that, and then it came time to come here to Greenberg Trump.
So why change from years of public service to private practice?
Look, it's interesting. I left for money, but I didn't stay for money. I tell people that all the time. The reason I left, I'd been a lawyer now for 10 years, and I was trying pretty significant money laundering case at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I went to use my ATM card at the cafeteria at the courthouse, and my credit card gets skimmed, it gets stolen. So by the time I finish picking the jury and I come back to my office, I now have $0 in my account. And I'm talking to Bank of America, and they're like, "Are you at a Walmart in Tennessee?" I'm like, "No, I'm a federal prosecutor in Miami. Trust me, I'm not at Walmart buying tires." And so, it takes a while for them to give you your money back, that kind of thing. But I had no money. I was still paying student loans, my loans from Yale, and I was a government servant. I had no money. I mean, whatever I had in my checking account was my savings. So literally, like, the prosecutor that sat in the office next to me gave me $20 so I could go home. And my mother came from Hialeah to give me $200, until the bank, replenished the $1,000 I had. I mean, I had no money. And I thought to myself, like, I've been a lawyer for 10 years. I have a law degree. And like, my safety net is my mother driving from Hialeah and the guy sitting next to me. Like, this is ridiculous. I have to pay these student loans. So I started interviewing. I was very fortunate. I had some very fine offers, including one from Greenberg Traurig. And there are a lot of great reasons why I came to the firm. One, I came in as a partner, which was very nice. I was just talking to my intern who's here. She asked me if I started as an associate. I'm like, "No, I was a partner." And that's really nice. Very nice to be a partner here. And when I got to Greenberg, and the reason I picked Greenberg over other firms, there's a lot of reasons, but the one reason I do publicly talk about is, when I met with Hillary Bass, who was the head of litigation at the time, Hillary had like a plan for me. At other firms, they would say, oh, a woman of your education and your skill set, you'll be fine here. But there was like no plan. Like, no, but what am I going to do when I get here? Hillary had all these ideas of what I was going to do when I got here. It ended up that those weren't the things I did, that my career took off in many other different directions. But Greenberg was opening its arms to me with a plan. Like there was going to be a home for me here, and something for me to do here. And that spoke to my need to have something concrete, right? And so I had my 2-year plan. I'd done the math. In 2 years, I could pay off my student loans and have $15,000 to $20,000 in the bank, which is all I needed. I was going to go back to the U.S. Attorney's Office. That was my 2-year plan. I thought for sure these people, I figured after year 1, they're going to realize I have to be fired. And so it might take them like a year to fire me. So 2 years is good. And the math on the 2 years worked. So it was 2 years. I stayed 15. And I tell people I never stayed. Although I left public service because I needed to have a safety net. I never stayed for the money. And I never stayed for the money because what I found here was, first of all, I had great friends here. I mean, I still have friends here, right? Like I had great friends at the firm. The firm also gave me a voice in many ways. You know, when you're a public servant, you can't be doing political things. There's a lot of things you can't do or say, right? Greenberg gave me an enormous platform. This firm is so well positioned around the community, right? I had a voice, right? Which I loved having. And I thought that was really fun and really cool. And the firm was so supportive of that. I was on all sorts of boards and political causes and whatever. Like the more I did, the better, right? The firm loved it. I loved it. And it was great. And then I loved my work here. So I had a great practice here. I was, for the most part, a specialist in Foreign Corrupt Practices Act work. So I traveled all of Latin America. My work was super exciting. It married 3 things I love: politics, law, and like social sciences, right? Because I tell people, you can't be an FCP lawyer in Mexico and be having a meeting in Mexico and think that you're going to give the same speech to the client in Chile, because it's not the same. It's just not the same. And you have to know that, right? You have to understand culture, and you have to understand, social structures, and you have to be a little bit of a student of history as well. So I loved that. It was like a practice that I thought was just so perfect for me. And I loved it. And I think I did well. People thought I did well. I didn't get fired. And I loved it. The issue in the meantime, during the course of those 15 years, is that I adopted a little girl. So I had a daughter by myself. And that was great too. And I was able to manage that well at the firm because the firm was very good to me in that respect. But then as she got older, it became difficult to manage. So that was sort of the raw part of it. And then different things were happening in our country that kind of reminded me that I became a lawyer to be a public servant. And sort of then all of that just kind of happened at the same time. But so that's how I ended up being here for 15 years.
So after 25 years of practice, you decide that you want to return to public service.
Yep.
And you apply and are selected to become a federal magistrate. And then last year, in 2024, you are confirmed to the district court bench, and where you currently serve. So what inspired you to be a judge? Are you checking my dates to make sure that I'm right?
No, you're totally right.
Okay, good.
No, it's interesting because when I became a magistrate judge first, I still am friends with all the girls I went to elementary school with. Like my kindergarten friends are still my friends. And when I became a magistrate judge, they all separately in conversations with me were like, oh my God, this is your childhood dream. So cool to see you get this. And I didn't remember, it's like, was that my childhood dream? Like I had a moment because I'm like, it must have been because all of you remember me talking about it. And I say to people, there's 2 big things. I had forgotten that it was my dream for 2 reasons. One is I loved being a lawyer. So I loved practicing law. I wasn't like practicing law, figuring out how am I going to get to the bench for 15 years. I wasn't plotting to become a judge for 20 years, right? I loved being a lawyer. But I think that the dream was kind of kicked out of me because I never saw anybody that looked like me. I mean, I was a lawyer for a decade before I ever appeared before a Hispanic woman. A decade. I was a trial lawyer for a decade. And so the thought that I would be a judge seemed ridiculous. And in fact, when I left the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C., a colleague there said to me, oh my God, I hear you're going back to Miami. You're going to be a judge there in no time. And I just looked at him like, this guy is like, what's wrong with him? I looked at him like weird. And I think he noticed that I gave him like a weird look. He's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean you couldn't be a judge here. Of course, you'd be a judge in DC, but I assume that in Miami, it'll be faster for you. And I'm thinking, now he's really crazy if he thinks I'm going to be a federal judge in DC, right? I thought, this guy is insane. But I think I lost that dream somewhere along the line because I just didn't think it was possible. I thought it was like silly for somebody like me to want to be a judge. Because like I said, the first judge I ever appeared before who looked like me was Cecilia Altonaga, who's the first woman chief of our court and the first Cuban American woman to ever be a district court judge. The next Cuban American woman who got nominated in this district was me. It took another 20 years between her and I. So I wasn't so crazy to think it was difficult or that it was a bit of too much of a dream. It ended up the magistrate position. It was just like everything in life, right? It was just great timing. I was ready to return to public service. I feel very strongly that the independence of the judiciary and a strong judiciary is what makes America the country it is. It's what made my entire life possible. And it is what distinguishes us from so many other democracies, is that independence. So I felt very strongly about contributing in that way and thought that at that point in my career, I could be a good judge. And so I was lucky to be selected. Magistrate judges are selected by district court judges, and then district court judges are appointed by the president. So those are the two different roles I've had on the bench. Oh, we have a time. So cool.
Oh,
I
okay.
thought always been, that
Well,
wasn't there before, was it?
It was going down. It was at 9 minutes earlier, so I'm not really sure if we were.
That's cool.
still-
That wasn't there before. That wasn't here when I was here.
We got fancy
I know,
without
I
you.
know.
I will let them know that you like the timer, so it is helpful. Can you just so that everyone understands, can you explain the difference in your duties as a magistrate judge versus a district court judge?
Sure. So magistrate judges, we only have 8 here in Miami. They're selected by district court judges. You serve essentially kind of like through the power that's bestowed by the Constitution to the judiciary, but you don't have a presidential nomination. So as a magistrate judge on civil cases, I can only do trials upon agreement of the parties because there's a limitation to the power of a magistrate. And in criminal cases, we set bonds and things like that, but we don't sentence people and we don't have criminal trials. Again, the constitutional authority of a magistrate is different because it's just derived from the district court. It's a creature of Congress. Congress created magistrate positions in the 1970s. District court judges were the judges that you read about in the Constitution, right? We're constitutional officers. And so the president appoints you, you're confirmed by the Senate, and I sit for life. So the day-to-day, there are some differences. I mean, our magistrates, especially here, have a lot of authority and do a lot of interesting work. Miami is a great place to be a judge. The district court position is definitely, obviously, it's more prestigious. It does have more power to it. There's no doubt about it. Although I was just talking to my intern about this. If you're somebody that wants to be a district court judge and you don't want to be a magistrate judge, then you're a judge for all the wrong reasons, right? Because both jobs serve the Constitution and serve the community and serve the pursuit of justice. Yes, one has more bells and whistles to it for sure. But fundamentally, you're still, right? You're still contributing. You're still part of the fabric, right, of the third branch. So those are the differences.
When you look at the recent appointments in the Southern District, both at the bankruptcy magistrate and district court levels or courts, we've seen a number of women,
including 2 Greenberg.
That is correct. Another one of our partners in litigation is now a federal magistrate judge, so we're very proud of that. What do you think the impact of the number of women that have been either appointed or have been confirmed to the federal bench here in South Florida will have?
Well, just looking at how things for me played out, I don't think there's any doubt that the impact of representation, right? If you believe that talent and intellect know no gender, know no race, no sex, right? Or no national origin, and it doesn't, right? I think science pretty much proves that. And if you believe that we want to live in a society where we empower as many people, irrespective of gender, it's important that women see other women, right? Because for me, like I said, that childhood dream was lost. I didn't even think it was available to me because I didn't see it. It's very difficult to be something you cannot see. And so I think having more women on the bench truly empowers younger women, right? To dream, to not let go of the dream. So I think it's very important. The other thing it shows to me, and this is something I hope nobody is offended by, but when you're a woman, and especially if you're a woman of color, if you're Latina, right, you better be used to being twice as good and working twice as hard. That's just life. And I think that's true for women generally as well. When you see the women that are on the bench, I mean, come on. I, Again, not to say that my male colleagues are not spectacular, but you cannot pick one woman who's on the bench and think, oh, how did she squeeze in? You're not gonna. She must have known somebody. No, like that's just not. It's just not that. So I think what people are seeing are incredibly successful women who are very proud of their work and honored to serve on the bench. So I'm happy that the bench looks more like our bar and looks more like our community. And I hope that inspires other great people, men and women, because I mentor men as well as women, right? I hope it creates more opportunities for all sorts of different kinds of people, understanding that what we want are people who are smart, who work hard, and who more than anything else are fundamentally dedicated to the rule of law and to justice and to fairness. And you can be a woman, a man, you can be anything to be that person. But if we want to have as many choices in that group, we want to make sure the door is as open as possible for everybody. So I hope that it will continue to do that in our community.
What surprised you now that you are not in private practice, not, working for the U.S. Attorney's Office? What surprised you being on that side of the bench, both either as when you were the magistrate or now at the district court?
So first of all, I can't tell you how much I work. I miss my Greenberg days. I work much harder as a judge, for sure. And part of it is that, private practice gives you a lot of flexibility, right? There's a lot of things in private practice. Your life is very different. We work really hard on the bench, and it's not very forgiving, right? Like I have a 2:30 plea. I can't sit here and talk to you for that much longer. I got a plea. I got to do it. I can't just continue it. Guy's been sitting in jail, his lawyer's schedule, right? Like there's a lot of things to my time that are difficult right now, and the job is very, very difficult. It's a very isolating job. And that isolation is immediate. Like they put a robe on you and you're isolated. And it only really gets worse with time. So that part, even though people would tell me it was very isolating, I didn't understand why. But I came from a career that was very big in the sense that, I never walked into a room when I was a partner at Greenberg Traurig and walked alone, right? I had associates, paralegals, secretaries. I mean, it was like a team, right? I never did anything on my own. And now I have phenomenal law clerks, I have interns or whatever. But when I sign an order, it doesn't have a footnote that says, and clerk B prepared this, and the judge was really busy. So if it's wrong, give her a minute, right? Like, it's not like that. So everything I do is very public, obviously. It's all my opinions are a matter of public record. And it's very isolating because it's really all on you. And that isolation of understanding that everything is on you is very different than working at a big firm or working at the U.S. Attorney's Office. That isolation is difficult, and it's still difficult because, as you could probably figure out by now, I'm pretty social. And I like to talk and all that kind of stuff. And like, you can't do that as a judge very much. So that part of it that's a daily thing of waking up and saying, today I'm going to do my job with as much dignity and work as I can, and understand that some of that dignity and work is very different than what my personal opinions are about things, or even sometimes my very nature. But that's the oath I took, and that's hard. And I wake up every day, and I have to say that to myself every day to make sure I do a good job every day, because I have to do a good job every day. When you make a mistake in private practice, like almost anything can be fixed. I used to tell associates all the time, like, we can fix it. We'll just fix it.
Unless it's jurisdictional.
Unless it's jurisdictional, it can be fixed. If I make a mistake, I can't fix it. I mean, the 11th Circuit might fix it for me, but if I make a mistake sending somebody, if I send in somebody to a year more than somebody else would have, like, that's somebody else's life. So I can't fix it the way I used to be able to fix all sorts of things when I was here. And I'm still getting used to that.
Well, we are at time. I want to thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming today.
Thank
and
you.
Speaking with me. It was a pleasure to hear about your journey to.
So I'll tell you that when they told me that Bridget was going to be the moderator, I didn't even look at the questions because I said, like, if Bridget and I can't talk for 20 minutes, I don't know what's happened to the world.
They offered to introduce us. I was like, yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm like, don't do that either. So thank you, because I know this is time in your day, and I appreciate you being here, because of course I feel better that it's Bridget asking me questions and not somebody else. So thank you for doing that.
I'm happy
Thank
to
you.
talk
Thank
to
you.
anytime. Thank you all.
So thank you so much for joining us. I want you to know we have hosted our Women's Hemispheric Network at Greenberg for, I think, 10 years. And